Hello, my name is John Melton, and today we'll be discussing what I've learned through the Texas A&M Bachelor's of Arts and Applied Science Organizational Leadership degree program. We're going to be going over a few different stages of what I've learned, and the first one is reflect on my leadership ability of when I began. So, as I said, my name is John Melton. I had been serving in the Army at that time almost 6 years, few months shy, and I was 23 years old, pretty young still. I have been through a few trainings through the Army, a WLC and ALC. The WLC is Warrior Leaders Course. That is a 4 week training that I left, and I was able to develop my leadership in leading small teams and organizations to accomplish goals. It was more oriented towards my soldiering skills and everything like that. But I learned a lot through that on how to actually lead these small teams. The next one I went to was a little bit further in my career, about a year shy when I was in for about 5 years. And that was Advanced Leaders course. That was a course where I learned more of my MOS to be a little bit more technical sound, but it worked on my leadership ability and my presence of who I was as a leader. And it was actually quite beneficial. I would like to think that I had a really good base of understanding whenever I started this degree program, a good base to start and continue my education. So that's where I believe I started. I think it was pretty good. I also worked with my father as a child. As a young child, I probably at about the age of 12 or 13, I would help my father. He had his own company in laying floors. And at a young age, I was able to help, and it really benefited me because at the age of about 16 to 17, I would be able to be on the job site. And since I was the boss's son, I was able to take more charge, and the other employees would listen to me. Even though they were a few years older, they understood that I've been working with him for a few years and that I knew exactly how to get things done. So I had a very good base with starting this degree program, but as I discuss further in this video, you'll learn that my education, some of it was right, some of it was not, but this degree program has really been beneficial to myself. Issues in organizational leadership. I learned a lot of great things in this class, from distinguishing between leaders and managers to conflict resolution, communication. The project was really great. First, I want to talk about, like I said, the difference between a leader and a manager. So, the difference between a leader and a manager is something that most people think that they know, but very few actually do understand the complexity of it. A leader is somebody that people are willing to lead rather than, or willing to follow rather than a manager, dictates a lot of things. A leader opens the door to critical thinking and many other things. Next, an effective and an ethical communicator, a lot that has to do with that is being an active listener and you're responding. So active listening is whenever you're actually engaged in the conversation, you actually, speak back, you tell them that you understand the complexity of it, you let them know that you know exactly what they're talking about. Responding is just that also, you don't give them answers that are just good enough. You let them know that you understand the complexity of what is happening, and you are able to effectively communicate that. Uh, Another great thing I learned was the examining of conflict resolution strategies, and the role of the conflict and negotiating when need be. So, the role of the conflict, there's always going to be issues within an organization. No organization is perfect. Therefore, there will be conflict. And conflict, and a lot of times, is good because it means that more than one party is thinking about something and people are comfortable enough to come up with situations that they don't think are right or that they could be improved. Therefore, it creates a conflict, and as long as people can have a good conflict resolution and negotiate about these things, then the conflict will be resolved, and a lot of times it will be resolved in a better manner than what it was beforehand. Another thing I learned was the importance of teams. So, in the Army, there is a small echelon that is called a team, where you have a sergeant with 3 to 4 subordinate soldiers. This, in the Army's eyes, is a team, but in my eyes, I own 2 small teams, but my squad, as they like to call it, is all one team because over the last few months, I've definitely been able to improve that, but my team is able to work effectively together, and we are able to have effective communication with critical thinking. And this course alone helped me in developing my squad, where I had 2 subordinate organizations work together as one conjoined team. The personal leadership strategy, which was the project I had to do at the end, was actually very, very useful in helping me throughout my development and in my organization, because I used this within my organization for things that needed to be improved. It went over multiple things, such as creating a vision and identifying my leadership attributes, communicating my leadership, developing others, leading teams, and additional skills. It was very, very useful, and I will use this class many years to come. Data driven decision making 1 and 2. This was very, very useful in my education because it gave me a great standpoint on the different types of disciplines, especially statistics, economics, accounting, all the way to finance, and what I've could do to improve all of these things within my organization. The coursework, it went over multiple things: types of data, presentation, responding, reporting. It was outstanding. The first one, we'll start with where I all began, and that is types of data. There's a big difference between quantitative and qualitative data, and how it could be used, where it should be used, all of these different things. Once you have that, you identify your data. What can it be used for? What can it not be used for? Then you move on to, how can we collect data? What is the best way to collect data in this instance rather than the next? And, once you have your data, can you present it in a professional manner? Because whenever you present it, you need to present it to stakeholders, subordinates, superiors, and they don't necessarily want to see a thrown together job. You need to be able to present it in a professional manner. You need to analyze your data. Whenever you get this back, you don't want to remain stagnant with that data. You don't want to analyze it in order to improve efficiency in your organization. You need to react to your data in the right way. That's also, within the analysis. You need to react to it the right way. If it's good, you need to say that it's good. But if it is not, you need to have understanding that there is need for improvement. There's a lot of different things that went into it, response, reporting, many other things. One of the great things that I learned from this course, though, was the actual hands-on project of data-driven decision-making 2. I was able to use PowerPoint, Excel, and Word. Word It helped me a little bit with importing and exporting, but PowerPoint was very useful because it allowed me to build graphs, and it forced me to get hands-on with this information, and it was extremely useful. That with Excel, I was able to do things that I didn't think I could do or I would be able to do, but I was able to do it, and at the end I was very, very happy with what I was able to do, and I've already implemented that in my organization. Behavior, ethics, and leadership. This was a two-term class that I really think were some of the best classes I took in this degree program. It gave me a good framework on where I stood and where I needed to go. In my opinion, psychology is the biggest medicine in mankind, and a lot of people don't understand it to where they should, and that's why they are not using it in the ways in which they would be able to flourish as leaders. It gave me a good framework of ethical dealings and moral leadership that we'll be discussing throughout this. I started off and I was able to apply critical thinking skills in, finding ways to resolve ethical issues. In the Army, as a non commissioned officer and as a sergeant, I've learned small skills, but this was really able to build on that prior knowledge, and just my information that I had combined with this, I was just full of new ideas on how I can actually effectively, resolve these issues to make a better team and better organization throughout. I was able to do many things from identifying intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, which is actually a very big thing within the military. I was able to identify the characteristics of behaviors and various leadership styles, and how a lot of the time it's really good to be a situational leader. That we'll discuss that further in this video, but it was a good standing point through behavior ethics and leadership to learn that. I was able to learn attributes. The Army also has attributes that they give leaders, such as character, presence, and intellect, that I've already tried to develop and improve. With all of the coursework, I was able to really identify attributes that help effective leadership. Um, from that, I moved on to the projects. The first one we're going to talk about is with Ford, the Ford Pinto, and how some small decision you might make could be very, very bad in the end. I think that Ford really should have took more consideration into the products that they were doing and have more care for the human life than what they did at that point. They did try to fix it in the back end, but that was already after, they lost a lot of money and people started politicizing it and all of that. So it would have been really beneficial for Ford to be ethical in the beginning of this, or the beginning of that. Next, about Nissan, that was actually very different than what I expected it to be, where, as we all know, Nissan brung in an outsider into the Japanese company, and he had all of the things that he needed to overcome in order to become an effective leader there. And through his leadership and his knowledge and his everything that he tried to do, he actually did an outstanding job, and could be called one of the most effective leaders of that decade or century because of what he was able to do in the position. One last thing I would like to talk about in ethics and behavioral leadership is what is ethics and behavior and how it could be dealt with in accordance with lies. Because a lot of people would say a lie is unethical. If you ask the average person, most people would say that. But if the lie was in order to help the majority of people, is it really unethical? Is truthfulness part of ethics? Because, in my opinion, a small lie or withholding information from people is not necessarily unethical if you have the consideration and the care for the majority of people. Then it's not ethical. An example of this is a senior leader in the military. They are privy to a lot more information than a subordinate soldier by a few echelons. These subordinate soldiers, such as myself, do not need to know all of the information because there are a lot of different possibilities and where I may go and things like that. But if I was to know all of that information, I would worry a lot more. I would get my family worried. The information would be leaked somehow, so the enemy may know, what our plan is. So I don't necessarily think that lying is unethical as long as you are lying and telling the truth with the matters that are beneficial for that lie are beneficial for the majority of people. Leadership theory. And this one was an awesome class because I was able to, really see throughout history where leadership was and where it is developed into be, and being able to know that information and use it. Things such as General Su from the Japanese military, over 2,000 years ago. I was able to read his book, The Art of War, which was outstanding and, just very eye opening to what he spoke about and what is still used and useful today. Uh, the historical theories really have been able to shape my information in my mind and how to actually effectively do a lot more with my information and my leadership and all of that. Throughout the end of these courses, I was able to develop a SWOT analysis, which I didn't know about a SWOT analysis before, this actual class, but it has changed the way I view, my organization. Because my project, I was able to actually, do a SWOT analysis, and it was outstanding. Some of the things, the internal factors such as the, in, strengths and weaknesses that have to do exactly from my organization. Then we got into the external factors that, the outside sources were able to influence these external factors and create opportunities or even, create threats. And then at the end, I was able to make recommendations. These recommendations can bring some of the opportunities and make them strengths, or bring some of the threats and, alleviate a little bit of, the chances of one of them happening just by being more situational aware. I brought in my team to assist me in some of the critical thinking, not knowing that it was part of the exam at the end, and it wasn't very formal, but I was able to use that as a great base point whenever I actually did start my project. So it's really, really great, and I actually plan on doing it on a larger scale with my entire organization once I get my newest promotion that hopefully I'll be getting here very soon. Whenever I take charge of my organization, we're going to sit down and we're going to do a SWOT analysis over the entire office and our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and we're all going to, as one team, be able to influence this. People will take more ownership and everything. It was just the SWOT analysis was very beneficial. I was able to uh, identify project management process, the different phases such as initiating, planning, executing, all the way through, and it also very beneficial for me for, not only now or for the degree program, but for me as a leader throughout, the rest of my job, my time in the Army, what I plan on doing afterwards, and even throughout the rest of my life. Leading change. This is what all of the other courses were building on exactly, how to identify the change, then, looking at the data, and then you finally get to leading change. And, it was a great class. It started with, the issues related to organizational change. And, it kind of showed me what I didn't want to do, so it's something really good to see at the very beginning of the course, and then I moved to the varied organizations such as the profit, nonprofit. I work in one of the biggest nonprofit organizations in the world, being in the U.S. DoD, Department of Defense, and you know it showed me a lot of the issues and ways that I could actually change and lead change within this organization. It showed me a lot of different things from how I had to build credibility and legitimacy, because if I don't have them, then it's going to be very, very hard for me to actually effectively lead change. So you need to first have some type of credibility and legitimacy, or it's going to be a lot harder for you to change on lead change in the back end. I was also able to explain the role and the conflict of the organization, and how it needs to serve the interest and of the organization. It was an outstanding class, and the project of it was just so outstanding because once again I was able to use it in for my actual organization. I was able to create a change management plan, went over various different aspects that most people would never even consider, but it was a great template, and it was a great thing to be able to do and to open my eyes on how to actually conduct change, because as we all know, the majority of change that we try never actually succeeds. So having this change management plan and a good standing point and a theoretical, change that I had to do in this course was outstanding, and I can't wait to actually implement change in my organization with all of the information that I've learned. Capstone 1 and 2, which were some of the best opportunities that I've had as a growing leader since, my leadership journey has began. It gave me, in Capstone 1, I got some information on, the various types of leadership theories and everything like that. And I was really able to use them in both of my papers. So, my first paper, I had to do leadership interviews with two different leaders through two different types of organizations. I I think I could have, not seeked the organizations or the size of organizations and still received a good enough grade. But I took this as an opportunity to actually, flourish and learn something, continue to learn through this degree, So I chose two different organizations. One, a non-profit organization, which was my organization pretty much. A couple higher echelons, my battalion, which has over 700 people. And I was able to talk to the XO, and I was able to discuss many different, you know, issues that he's had with his leadership, things that he's learned, things that he does now, things that he has done in the past, and really able to help my knowledge and understanding and having a one-on-one with a very high level leader and a very educated leader was very beneficial. The next leadership interview I had was with Mr. Christian, and it was actually a lot harder to find this leader because a lot of high level leaders, or managers in that sense, kind of push off the opportunity to teach younger people in society. I talked to multiple different places, and the first one who actually accepted my offer was the Four Seasons in Oahu, Hawaii, where I live. I scheduled the interview and I met up with him. He was an awesome person. Their organization, he actually leads over 750 people. And the way he leads his people compared to Major Johannes differed because of the profit, non-profit, the different types of organizations. But they both gave me a really great vision on different types of leadership and how I can effectively lead change and teams and just a very wide range. It was an outstanding opportunity, and I really enjoyed, looking at all of the different data that I learned from both of them and comparing and contrasting with the situational leadership uh, interviews or the situational leadership test that I had them do and able to look at that. It was just an outstanding opportunity. The next essay that I had to do was a strategic case analysis, and I was able to do this over Major Johannes's organization, which I knew a little bit more about, and it was really awesome to be able to look at all of the data or all of the information that I received throughout the entire course, and I was able to use that in the strategic case analysis, which is, a very big SWOT analysis, thousands of words. It was just, it kind of forced me to read into, the information again, but by doing that, it gave me an opportunity to put all of the information together in one place. And the SWOT analysis, once again, it gave me the strengths, weaknesses, and the internal factors, then the external factors, opportunities and threats. But then it also gave me, the other external factors such as, politics and legal and all of the different things, which was very beneficial. And at the end of it, I was able to realize how it all comes together and how effective I could be as a leader if I am able to use this information. So I'm very thankful for the opportunity to do both my leadership interviews and my strategic case analysis. And I think that it's really set me up to be a better leader in my organization and for any organization that I'll be part of in the future. I think that I have developed into more of a situational, transformational leader, which is very effective for my position in the Army and what I do. I was able to use multiple things that I'll continue to use, such as the SWOT analysis, different theories, one of which is the Hershey Blanchard situational leadership theory. uh, you know, which outstanding theory, and me being able to implement this through myself and my subordinate leaders, just really great information to have for the future. I'm much more situationally aware, of managers or leaders and the difference between the two and how it all works in conjunction. Uh, I think that I've developed into a more educated leader, and that, in my opinion, is a very, very good quality. Uh, in my position as a squad leader in the Army, as the leader of multiple small teams, I figured out throughout this that I need to be more charismatic to the needs of my soldiers. Last thing that we'll be talking about in this discussion is where do I go from here? And I think that's a really good question because it gives me, a plan and goals that I set for myself to move forward. This is the final class, this is the final project of what I need to do for my bachelor's. And the next thing I'll be moving on to is either a master's, an MBA, or I'm going to look for a master's in some type of psychology. This information throughout this course have really opened my vision and the horizon to the human mind and how to actually influence it. So I really want to learn more going forward. That kind of works on to the next goal that I have, which is work on my leadership and continue to read. Reading really opens your eyes to new ideas and new theories and everything to the sort. So I want to really continue to do all of that to help improve my knowledge and my leadership. The last thing that I'm going to do is kind of what I took away from my leadership interviews in my Capstone 1, and that is take initiative. So I plan on taking initiative whenever and wherever I can to improve my organization, improve myself, and improve my team.